In Greek of old, you will have heard that the population was categorized into different segments. There were idiots, and there is never a shortage of them. And the idiots' greatest claim to fame is that they do not care about what is happening in their country. They do not care about what is happening in their surroundings. They are prepared to make shortcuts. They live as if the world belongs to them, and they destroy their societies. They are toxic to their societies. The second category of the population are tribesmen and women. These are individuals whose worldview is defined by ethnicity. They look at the world from the prism of ethnicity, and ethnicity here does not simply mean one tribe. It could mean religion. It could mean racism. There is also no shortage of them in the world. They too destroy societies. Indeed, this country is still reeling from a foundation that was laid by tribesmen through apartheid in 1948 until 1994. Then there are the citizens. These are the men and women who know that they belong to a society and that they must serve their society in truth and justice. They are few and far between. And I want to believe that this evening I'm not addressing idiots, I'm not addressing tribesmen and tribeswomen, I'm addressing citizens. Therefore, good evening, dear citizens. It is possible to convert idiots into citizens through enforcement of law, through constant reminder, and we must always speak to them and remind them of their civic duties. And that is why when we assembled this morning, we were appealing to the hearts and minds of people in the knowledge that they can be converted. Tribesmen and tribeswomen can also be converted through reorientation. And you are assembled here this evening as citizens in the knowledge that we have work to do. We who have made the decision that we are going to be devoted citizens not only of South Africa, but of Africa and the world. I am speaking in the presence of men and women who are successful on the path of success, because I was told that success is a journey and that you are not successful until historians say you are successful. So we are gathered here with captains of industry. We are gathered here with individuals who are contributing to society in different ways as professionals. And we are asking ourselves, what is the value of the contributions that we are making in our societies? And how can we sustain our contributions? Because many are the times when we think we have succeeded, yet in a short time, our apparent success disappears without a whimper, giving meaning to the saying that you are not successful until your successor succeeds. We are here, therefore, to remind ourselves that life itself is a relay race, and the success of the other runners depends on how we run the relay race. The question that we must ask ourselves this evening, what is the contribution that we are making to this generation and generations yet to be born? In the continent of Africa, we know that we have labored under painful conditions and circumstances. And wherever we find ourselves, whether we are businessmen and women, there are still burdens that we have to bear because the continent does not create or has not created an environment where we can fulfill our ambition in all its splendor. But the question is it us who must create those conditions? Those of you who are doctors, lawyers, accountants, business people, and who are involved in different activities in the world, do you ever pause to ask yourself the question, how will it be 10 years from today? How will it be 20 years from today? How will it be when you are gathered to your fathers? Because there is only one appointment that we have, the appointment that you shall go upstairs. And when the time arrives, what will happen to the things that you have done? You will remember this story told of Alexander the Great, called the Great because before he attained the age of 36, he had conquered the known world. And he went into India, tried to conquer India. Then he died, and as he was on his deathbed, his would-be successors were beginning to think about succession. And he instructed his doctors, so the story goes, that when I die, I want it to be that I am laid down in a coffin with my hands stretched out. And let the doctors be the one that carry my casket to the grave, to tell the world that with nothing I came and with nothing I shall leave. And to tell the world that when death visits you, not even the best of physicians can save you. The story of Alexander the Great tells us that it is an irony in life. We come into the world crying with nothing in our hands, and we spend all our time looking for things. And on the day that we leave as we came with nothing. So we must ask ourselves the things that we have accumulated here on earth for the sustenance of our very being in this earth. To whom shall we bequeath them? Because we shall not live with them, yet we must accumulate them. Even the bodies that you have accumulated them here on earth. Your real body is accumulated here on earth. You came a little baby without teeth, and without teeth you shall live. That is the reality of the world. So this evening we are asking ourselves fundamental questions as Africans because we have a role to play for this continent. You know, as Africans, we ask ourselves, how can we make this continent a continent which is a magnet, which attracts us and makes us retain our people in this continent? That is our constant struggle. When you have an African passport and you travel to Europe and America, the likelihood is that you may be called aside and asked unnecessary questions simply because you come from an African continent, of the continent of Africa. When you apply for a visa, if you want to understand torture by ordeal, apply for an American visa, Australian or a British. The number of questions that you are asked, including the age of your great-great-grandfather, among other things. And the reason is simple, because we have not succeeded in harnessing our resources. The good pastor has just told us about a conversation that he had with his children, and that conversation is a conversation that is held at the tables of many middle-class families in Africa. And I know many parents who, when they see their children off at airports, whether it is at OR Tambo or Kotoka in Accra or in Njili, in Kinshasa, they say, "My son, go, never come back, never come back." Why? We must ask ourselves. Because we have not created conditions that make it conducive for us. Many are families that are persuading their children, go out there into Canada, go out there into Australia, go out there into the United States of America and get a second citizenship just in case. Just in case. This is a contradiction of the age-old saying that wherever you go, home is always best. In the minds of most of us, home is not best. And we are gathered here today to consider how we can reverse that anomalous situation. And we can. This morning, we had the honor and privilege of witnessing some of our people being recognized for the contribution that they have made to the South African society. The good lady who owns the football club. You will possibly liberate our young men and women from Manchester and Barcelona and Real Madrid. Because how can it be that football is a multi-billion-dollar industry, but it is only a multi-billion-dollar industry in Europe? Why can't we make it a multi-billion-dollar industry here, so that our young men and women can come to South Africa and make it a multi-billion-dollar industry? It can be done. And you are blazing the trail. When you blaze the trail, I can tell you that there's going to be no shortage of naysayers who will tell you, we have been there before. You will fail. Tell them that failure is success turned inside out, and that you are going to succeed. It can be done in Africa. This is what we are talking about. We are talking about you who are in different sectors of the industry going out there and rolling up your sleeves and telling this generation and generations yet to be born that it can be done and that it must be done. How can it be, those of you who are in agriculture, this year, the year 2022 has been declared by the African Union as the year of nutrition. We are telling ourselves that we must be in a position to feed ourselves. When we have appetite for rice, can we produce rice? Or we are depending on rice from Pakistan? When we have appetite for sweet potatoes, are we importing the sweet potatoes? These are the questions that we must ask, because Africa must be able to feed herself. If you can't feed yourselves, you cannot be respected. If you cannot take care of your affairs, you cannot be respected. And we are talking about leadership and the future. Today, as you sit where you are, I want you to ask the question which I ask myself on a daily basis. Suppose the angel of eternal life, I don't want to call him the angel of death, the angel of eternal life came to you and said, Madam, gentlemen, you remember Christ telling us that there are many mansions in his Father's house. Yours is ready. Yours is ready. Are you prepared to go? Oh, like is it Hezekiah who said, give me a few more years. And I'm saying this because in your company, you must be ready. Are you preparing the successor generation? And how are you preparing the successor generation? Because one of the greatest disadvantages that we have in Africa is that we are always starting things. One generation starts and it ends, another generation starts and it ends. I know that the gathering here is a gathering of men and women who believe in God, but one of the adverts that I love is Johnny Walker, born in 1862, and is still walking strong. And the reason why I love it is because there must have been a succession plan. There was a succession plan. That is why nearly 200 years later, they still claim that they are making the same flavor as it was in 1862. Do we have companies that will go to heaven with us? Of course, the companies will not go. They'll just suffer here, bankruptcy and insolvency and all. These are the questions that we must ask ourselves. And I'm suggesting to us that those of you who are in industry, all of us must have this succession plan. Because that is what leadership is all about. Leadership is about preparing the next generation. Leadership is about creating an environment that ensures that those who come after you are better than you. And there is no greater recompense for a founder than to create an environment where those who are following him or her are going to thrive in a much more robust environment. Today, Africa is asking herself many questions, and these are questions that were asked. They are foundational questions. Foundational questions because when we were fighting to regain our independence, we were making promises to ourselves that we would be in a position to feed ourselves. We would be in a position to exploit our resources. We would be in a position to create our institutions. The question is, are we doing so? I remember in that very spirit, in 1980, African leaders sat in Lagos in Nigeria and came up with what was called the Lagos Plan of Action. The Lagos Plan of Action, which was to run between 1980 and the year 2000, had one promise, that we are going to ensure that there is intra-African trade. And when you want to have intra-African trade, there must be free movement of peoples. There must be the open skies. After the Lagos Plan of Action, we had the Yamoussoukro Agreement in Yamoussoukro in Cote d'Ivoire about the movement of aircrafts in our spaces. We had the Kigali Agreement on the free movement of persons. We had the Maputo Declaration. We had the Malabo Declaration. No shortage of declarations about what we are going to do. No shortage. But the question is what have we done and what are we doing? Then in the year 2013, and it's not lost on me that your fellow South African was presiding over the African Union at that time. Nkosazana and Dlamini Zuma was the chair of the African Council at that time. And we came up with Africa Agenda 2063. That is Africa's grand agenda. If there is anything that we have now promised ourselves is 2063. When I look at the men and women who are present in this assembly, in 2063, we may have this gathering upstairs, all of us. There is no doubt about that, because nobody lives as long as Methuselah. But we can make our contribution now, because in order to get 2063, we've got to break it down into year 1, year 2, year 3. It is cumulatively that we do it. There is a great African saying which I love, that when a river gets into the ocean, it loses its name. We are mere rivers getting into the ocean of life. And when we get into the ocean, we no longer talk about rivers. We talk about the ocean. And we are telling you that that is what we must do under Africa Agenda 2063. And what are we saying about Africa Agenda 2063? That we as Africans shall have a respected and a respectable voice in the world scene. And what does that require? That our politics is right. We elect men and women who can serve us and who know that service is leadership, that we can feed ourselves, that we can take care of our affairs, and that we can participate in the world affairs on an equal footing with others. And that is only going to happen if you men and women who are present here and others who are elsewhere recognize that Africa must begin to trade with ourselves. We now have the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. And we are telling ourselves under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area that we are going to eliminate tariff and non-tariff barriers. That if I have a product like rooibos, which you produce in South Africa, that product is going to get into Banjul, the Gambia, without any tariff and non-tariff barriers being imposed on it, so that we are able to trade within Africa. Otherwise, it is still cheaper to get an item from Shanghai in China, bring it to the continent of Africa, and it's still cheaper than getting an item from Namibia. This is what we are promising ourselves. We are promising ourselves that all these currencies that we have, including your rand, will disappear without a whimper, or with it. But disappear nevertheless, so that we are able to come up with one currency. It can be done. And when we do that, you imagine, yesterday, I flew for 3 hours, 30 minutes from Nairobi, Kenya. And I had a few shillings in my pocket. The shillings are useless until I go home tomorrow. But if I was in Europe, I could fly from Bratislava in Slovakia to the Canaries in Spain with €1 and it's still good. Nobody would be asking me, what has brought you to South Africa? Is politeness that underneath it is questioning my intentions? Have you been to South Africa before? Yes. For how many days are you going to stay here? At which hotel? Who invited you here? I have a booklet for my entry to explain my intentions when I come to South Africa. And when you come to Kenya, it's the same thing. You go to Mozambique, it's the same thing. I look forward to the day that I can wake up in the morning and I'm saying I'm going to Kinshasa in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And it can happen. As long as you create these artificial boundaries, then we want to see what is happening in South Africa. Our curiosity is raised in that way. And when that happens, what is going to happen is that the South African expertise is going to be used for purposes of building the expertise of people in Zimbabwe, in Mozambique, in Eswatini, in Namibia, in Angola. So they won't want to come. They will only come as citizens to enjoy Cape Town and to enjoy Durban and to enjoy Port Elizabeth, which I think should be renamed anyway. These are the kind of things that we are talking about. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hold the view that when we talk about leadership to leaders, you are leaders. And that is why it is very easy to talk to you, because I'm not telling you anything new. But what I've discovered about these self-evident truths is that they must be repeated, because we have the tendency to forget. You know, you are also men and women of faith. At one time, I was listening to a sermon and I thought that the pastor was inspired on that day. And he told his audience that we are very happy that you are present in this congregation. And don't delude yourself for one moment that you are pure. And you should see people in church, particularly when it's the day of the Holy Communion. When the song has been sung and they have been invited to the altar and they take this pose, they rival the angel Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael combined in sheer pity. They are going to take the body of Christ. The pastor told us, no, you are the sinners who are present in this assembly, and your greatest claim to fame is that you have recognized that you are sinners and that you have come to hostel that you may be cured. And I think there is wisdom in that. You are leaders who have recognized that you ought to do something in your own community, and I'm inspired this evening to tell you that you are great because you have exercised the ghost of arrogance. You have exercised the ghost that resides in our hearts that makes us believe that we have the monopoly of wisdom and knowledge. And you have come to this assembly in the knowledge that you want to be reminded of the things that you know. Because when you are reminded, it energizes your spirit and intentions. Ladies and gentlemen, I have no doubt in my mind, as I said, we live in a world where there are idiots. You are not idiots. We live in a world where there is no shortage of tribesmen and tribeswomen. We live in a world where we need devoted citizens. You are those devoted citizens. We live in a world where we have a duty to go out there in humility to try and persuade our men and women who have resident in them the ghost of idiocy and the ghost of tribalism, so that we may expel those ghosts, so that they may go and seek residence in the pigs that are waiting out there, and they may be available for being oriented to be devoted citizens. So you who are here, think of Africa. Don't think of South Africa, which has a population of only 58 million or 60 million at best. We are 1.4 billion. 1.4 billion. That is a market. But it is only a market when people have money in their pockets. So you imagine that you are a business person in producing a product and you have a market of 1 billion. That is how China gets it right. 1 billion people consuming an item. It can be done. It has been done. Today, the Mecca that all middle-class people want to visit is Dubai. Dubai, as the good pastor said, was a desert 50 years ago. Today, they have converted the desert into something that is a magnet. In your own neighborhood here in Mauritius, Mauritius is becoming a magnet with a population of no more than 3 million. In your neighborhood here, Seychelles is becoming a magnet with a population of no more than 800,000. We can do it, and it is all of us combined that must do it. And the beauty of the world is that everybody has their work cut out for them. There are those of you whose duty it is to go out there and make millions. Behold, make millions. There are those of us whose duty is to irritate you on a daily basis that you may make millions. All of us have our work cut out for us, and our duty is to realize that we are running a relay race. I run my leg, you run your leg, and when we win, then we will all celebrate in the knowledge that we are making an Africa that we are going to bequeath to our children and children's children, an Africa that will be great, an Africa that will be respected, an Africa that will be acknowledged, an Africa that will not be mistreated, an Africa that will not be abused, an Africa that will be acknowledged as the cradle of mankind. I said at the beginning, if I go beyond this, then it would not be a dinner speech. Thank you very much. Dinner will be served shortly. Thank you very much. God bless you.
I'm a king, yes, I'm a king. I'm a king.